everybody, this is Amber, Sweet Tooth Cakes. Just wanted to show you guys how to make this really cool sub sandwich. Let's get started. So normally if I was making this, it would be actual cake. For this, I actually used Rice Krispie Treats just because I'm using this for a display cake instead of a real cake. I didn't want it to go bad, of course. So if you are making something with Rice Krispie Treats, you do want to make sure that you are using the recipe from modeling Rice Krispies and not real, like, ones. I mean, you could still eat it, but in the ones that you normally make at home, you have butter in it, so it kind of gives it a little bit more, I want to say softness. For this one, you want it to be more sticky, so omit the butter and just use marshmallows and Rice Krispies. Anyway, when you're making your bread loaves, you want to go ahead and make them both the same size. Make sure the bottom is a little bit flatter, the top is a little bit more rounded edge, and you want to cut your little indents for the slices, just like a real baked bread loaf. So for this, after you have your shapes the way that you want them to look, you take your buttercream and go ahead and crumb coat your cake, and make sure that you fill in all the little gaps and divots that are in your cake or Rice Krispie Treats, because the smoother you put your buttercream on, the smoother your fondant will be on your cake. So for the little divots, what I found to be easiest was a straight edged spatula. It fit all the way down into my crevices, and then I was able to kind of press down on the sides and pull up, and it gave it a real nice straight sharp edge. So then, because this is more of a rounded cake, I went ahead and used a small square piece of acetate paper, which is awesome because you can actually curve it to the shape of your cake and you will get the perfect smoothness in your buttercream. You won't have ledges or lips on your cake or anything like that. See, look how smooth it gets your edges. It's just a wonderful, wonderful tool to use for curved cakes. So once I was happy with the smoothness of my cake, I went ahead and made some fondant with a little bit of brown ivory and yellow food coloring just to get it kind of the color of a baked loaf of bread. I wasn't too concerned about the folds and the edge. I just needed a kind of a long piece to go over the top of my cake. So putting it on, I left a little bit of air underneath just so it was easier for me to push down into the gaps. I went ahead and started first with my fingers, and then I used a paintbrush to kind of smooth in the indentations because I didn't want to rip the fondant. So once I had it smooth, I kind of went around with my hand and with my fondant smoother and just got it to the nice shape I wanted it. I left a little overhang to tuck underneath the cake when I was done. When I flipped it over, I didn't want to leave fingerprints in it, so that's why I'm using my foam pad right there. And you do want to leave overhang on the top and bottom bun because you don't want to, if you have any kind of gap in between the ingredients, you don't want to be able to see the Rice Krispie Treats or the cake underneath, or the cake board for that matter. So again, same thing with the bottom. Make sure also when you are rolling out your fondant, so it doesn't stick to your surface, you're taking the time to kind of flip it and turn it. And if there needs to be a little bit more powdered sugar or cornstarch, that you go ahead and place it. Otherwise, you'll have a heck of a time with fondant sticking to your table and stretching, and then you have to re-roll it, and that's just a pain. So save yourself some time and make sure you are moving your fondant around. So again, for the bottom, I left a little bit more overhang, kind of tucked it down, glued it with a little bit of buttercream, and just cut it flat and smoothed it with my fondant smoother. And then again, I took my foam pad and just kind of rubbed the top so that I didn't get fingerprints on it. And then my favorite part is decorating with a blowtorch. Anytime you use a cake that's like a grilled cheesecake or a pizza cake maybe, or a hamburger cake, anything that looks like something baked in the oven, this blowtorch is your go-to tool. So you want to make sure you don't leave it in one place too long, unless you're making like a pizza crust where you kind of want those real dark marks, because it will darken up quick. So for the top, I did want the dark marks, especially on the top surface of the bread loaf, because when you're baking something in the oven, the closer it is to the top, what happens? You get kind of that darker feel to the top. So I took my my torch. I kind of started with the grooves. And then as I was happy with the grooves and the darkness of them, I kind of blended my way towards the middle of each groove to make it look more realistic. Once I was done with the top, I went ahead and started with the sides to get it how I wanted it to look. So you can just do this however you want. Everybody has their own preference on the way they want things to look. Some people you know, want their bread a little darker than others and things like that. So just keep going until you have it the way you want it to look. Now it is time to start on our ingredients. First I did lettuce. I just took some white fondant, put a little bit of yellow and leaf green, and cut them into little circles or shapes. It really doesn't matter what shape it is because you're only going to see the edge anyway. I used my ball tool to kind of thin the edges down and give it a more crinkly look. And then when I let my lettuce dry, I didn't want it to dry flat. So I took some paper towels and I went ahead and kind of crinkled it up and laid my lettuce on it to dry so it'd have a little bit more curve to it. So after I was done with my lettuce, I was letting it dry and I went ahead and started on my turkey meat. For my turkey meat, I took some white fondant, added a dash of brown food dye, rolled them into little balls, and then flattened them out with my fondant roller. I took them, it doesn't really matter how rounded they are. When you get a slice of turkey meat, they're kind of a little bit different shapes. So I rolled them pretty thin, folded each one into thirds, just folded it over 3 times just so it has that nice curve like when you have a folded piece of deli meat in your sub sandwich. And then later on I'll show you how to intensify the look of the turkey by painting the edges. But the next thing we're going to do here is make our purple onion. So for the purple onion, I took a white piece of fondant, I rolled it out into a log. After I had my log to the length I wanted, I went ahead and rolled it flat, and then I took my pizza cutter and just cut out some nice long slices out of it. After you have your slices cut out, you want to take some vodka, a little bit of purple, a little bit of red food dye, and then you want to paint the edge of each slice. Once you have each slice painted, you are going to take each of your little slices of onion and you're gonna wrap them to each other. You'll see right here in the video, it's kind of like when you cut an onion over and you have the little pieces and they get a little bit bigger as they go. So I kind of wrapped them into each other. Once I was happy with how they were wrapped into a nice curve, I cut them and then I just set them aside to dry. Again, it doesn't have to be a whole circle because you're only going to see half of that onion anyway. So set those aside to dry, and then let's start on tomatoes. For the tomatoes, I took some white fondant, dyed it a deep red, just took a large round piping tip, cut out my circles. After I was done cutting out my circles, and I did also leave it a little bit on the thicker side, I took the lid to my food dye just because it was something solid that I could use to indent the middle of each tomato. I took a lid, indented them, and then I took the same colors that I used for my onion and painted each tomato and put some sesame seeds in the middle, kind of going around in a circle like a real onion is, looks. And then because I didn't want to make 20 tomatoes, I just took each one and cut it in half. Because you're not, once again, going to see the whole tomato anyway, unless it was like an open sub. So once I did that, here's my turkey. It's a little bit drier. So I took a little bit of brown food dye and vodka and just painted the edge of each slice of turkey. Just a very thin edge. So it's kind of like when you get a piece of turkey meat, how the edge is kind of like the roasted part of the turkey before they slice it with their machine. And then of course the olives, which was the easiest thing to make, just some black fondant, roll it out a little bit thicker, cut a circle, and then cut a circle inside of the circle, and then also put those aside to dry. Once you're done with those, I wanted to make some pepperoni also, kind of like an Italian sub. And so I took the same red that I used for my tomatoes, but I added some brown food dye to give it more of that pepperoni color. I did roll in and mix with my fondant some sesame seeds just to give it that kind of texture that a real piece of pepperoni has. Once I was done rolling it and I knew that there was only one roll left until the thinness, I sprinkled some more sesame seeds and gave it one final roll just to kind of press those into the fondant. Once I had those pressed, see how nice and textured that looks, just like a real piece of pepperoni. I just took, again, my large circle cutter or large piping tip, whatever you have is fine, and I cut out my circles for my pepperonis. I did want to paint my pepperonis a little bit just so that the sesame seeds didn't look as white. So I took a little bit of brown food dye, added it to my red mixture that I had already used for my tomatoes, and I kind of just painted the top of each of the pepperonis just to give it more of a realistic appearance. Once I was done with all of the pepperonis, And for these, I just left them circles, just, you know, just to leave them. And once I was done with the pepperonis, I went ahead and started with my cheese. So I kind of wanted to do like the look of an American cheese. So I just took some orange and some yellow, put it together, mixed it up till I got the color I wanted, and cut my slices kind of like triangles, kind of like they do at the sub sandwich stores. It doesn't have to be perfect. All you're gonna see is that corner slice hanging down out of your sandwich. So here's my final look on the ingredients. I also used some royal icing, dyed some yellow like mustard, and left some white for like the mayonnaise, which I did use to glue some of my ingredients together. So I also wanted to dowel one half of my sandwich up, so make sure you cut your dowels the same size. The reason I did this is because I wanted to look like the sub was opening, not just flat on the top. So I just put 3 dowels in there to hold the top half of the bun in place. And see how beautiful it looks right here? Like, they cut your sandwich, but they didn't cut it all the way in half, and it just looks gorgeous, and you want to eat it right away. That's the look I was going for. So I took some royal icing / mayonnaise, put it on the bottom of my sub. I glued my lettuce in there, some of it a little bit more overhung than others, just so it would be a little bit more realistic appearance. And then I did remove the top of the bun. The only reason I put that on there is because I wanted to see how much space I would have for the ingredients I was going to put in there, to kind of figure out what was going to fit. So I did remove my bun after this part. So the cheese, again, you want to put some pushed back a little more, some sticking out a little more, and just throw it on there however you want, however many slices you want, totally up to you. Once you're done with the cheese, I went ahead and decided to cut the edges because I didn't want them poking out of the other side. All I wanted you to see on the other side was the 2 pieces of bread that come together. So then I went ahead and added my turkey. See how nice it looks with the edges painted like a real slice of turkey meat straight from the deli? That's the look I was going for. Really easy to achieve. You can put as much or as little turkey meat as you want in your sub. More to me was better because I wanted to look more appetizing. Anyway, finish your turkey meat. Make sure that you are using a little bit of royal icing kind of on your ingredients as you place them so that things are not falling out when you're moving your sandwich around when you're done. So after I did the pepperoni, I went ahead and stuck some onions on there, and then I put my little tomato halves on there, and then I was ready for my olives. Now the olives, I didn't want them to be so structured, so I put some royal icing on, made sure everything was holding together, and then I put some olives on the top, and then I took a couple more olives and I kind of put some in between the slices of the turkey meat, and then I put some in between the cheese, and just, you know, here and there, however you feel like you want it to look, because when they make you a sub sandwich, they just kind of throw the olives all over the place. So after you have your olives placed, you are going to get ready to add your top bun. So if you already have the holes pressed in the top bun, that's fine. If you don't, just make sure that you are kind of having it in one place, holding it directly how you want it to look. Place your top bun, press it down, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank